Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Did anyone just walk into State of the Arts in the past 15 minutes by show of hands? All right, welcome, welcome. Everyone else, having a good time? Having an informative, engaged day? Have you learned something? Have you committed to something yet? Uh-oh, okay. You've got a little bit of time left. I'm Sam Oliver. I'm the executive director here at the Acadiana Center for the Arts. So it's been such a pleasure to host all of these amazing thinkers and leaders from our community today. I really just want to recognize everyone who's helped make this all possible. I hope you all enjoy our phenomenal keynote presentation. You're in for a treat. But I really want to recognize some of the staff of the Acadiana Center for the Arts who've put this together, namely Anna Kojevnikov, our community engagement director, and Audrey DeMaye, our community engagement coordinator. They're really the team behind all of today, as well as many of our programs throughout the community that support individual artists and cultural organizations throughout the Acadiana region. They really are the heart and soul of the Arts Council that we are. So we owe a huge debt of gratitude to them for today. I want to recognize our supporters, our funders, LFT Fiber, and Michael Swallow, who is also one of our panelists, our presenting sponsor today. I want to thank LEDA, Lafayette Economic Development Authority, the National Atchafalaya Heritage Area, as well as everyone who's just participated in making this possible, the 705, one of our supporting sponsors, and really all of you for your time, your commitment today to be a part of this conversation. I'll hand it off to a special guest we have who will introduce our keynote. So join me in giving a warm welcome to, let's just call him Brockmeyers.
When he called me earlier this morning, he said, Senator, and I said, I just don't want to be senator for a couple of weeks after the session ended last night. I said, so if you could just call me Brock just for a week or two, that would be appreciative. And, Sam is always the one up here or around Lafayette talking about the help that everybody else does and thanking them. But I don't think Sam gets enough thanks, or at least I never get a chance to say it enough. So thank you for everything you do, Sam. All right, so very, very excited. As Sam mentioned, I'm State Senator Brockmeyers, and it's an honor to be here with all of you to close out what has been a powerful and energizing day at State of the Arts 2025. This follows closely on the closing of the legislative session, which finished just yesterday after a productive 6 weeks. This has been my first session, by the way, representing District 23 as one of your delegates in Baton Rouge. It is a great to have an organization like ACA here to create a platform for this conversation that doesn't just educate us, but it excites us for what is possible and motivates us to take action and bring about great things for our community. Today we have seen the data, heard the stories, and shared the vision, confirming what so many of us already believe, that arts and culture are not side notes to our society. They are central. They are foundational. They are strategy for economic growth, for community, for resilience, and for human dignity. We've heard from business leaders, educators, civic organizers, and creatives, and now we are going to close the day with a magnificent keynote from someone who brings all of those worlds together. Dr. Christophe Jackson is a concert pianist, composer, scientist, and clinician whose life's work bridges the gap between creativity, health, and cultural memory. He holds a PhD, a doctoral of music arts, and is a surgical physician assistant. He also, by the way, just told me that he likes to cook for a lot of different delegates back in Australia. So he finds time to cook and eat in times of everything else that he's doing. To say he is a Renaissance figure would be an understatement. Raised in the Mississippi Delta and shaped by its deep musical roots, Dr. Jackson brings not only artistic mastery to the stage, but also a profound understanding of the power of sound to heal, connect, and transform. His work sits at the crossroads of tradition and innovation, lifting up Southern musical heritage while advancing new research on how music affects the brain and the body. Now he lives in between the Northern Territory of Australia and Atlanta, Georgia, where he continues all this amazing work. Again, he's a clinician, a scholar, a cultural preservationist, and above all, a visionary. His keynote tonight is both a performance and an invitation to listen more deeply, to reflect more honestly, and to imagine more boldly what possibilities when we treat culture not as an afterthought, but as an essential part of who we are and how we heal. Please join me in welcoming an extraordinary thinker, artist, and advocate, Dr. Christophe Jackson.
Greetings, and thank you all for having me here. It is absolutely wonderful to be back home in Louisiana, where I've been reared and raised. But before I get started, I want to do several things. I want to give a big thanks to Stam for inviting me for this talk, to Anna. Please give them a round of applause because they deserve it. Most of all, to you that came to this audience, to friends, to coworkers, to colleagues who've watched me along for this journey. Now, part of this talk is going to be what creativity does to your brain and how the arts drives innovation. And that's a pretty big talk, but I kind of want to start it with a story that starts a little closer to home. Let's hope my clicker works. Ooh, it does. So I kind of want to say that I'm not just talking about what creativity does to the brain, but I'm also a client. And in that picture, you'll see I was 4 years old. Yes, it was during a time where they did believe in the ruffles and good fashion of that era. It's okay. But I also want to say it like this. If I could say to that little boy, thank you. And if I could also say to my grandmother, with her strong Irish, feisty background, my father who is Greek, a mother who is Haitian, to be a young, biracial man of color who's also gay in the South should have met many challenges and many things that should have said that my dreams, my opportunities would have been different. But I never knew that because they made sure that my life was reared in the culture that you all live in, breathe in, seep in every single day, and how magical this place is. And what that little boy got told was that music was a part of his life, and it was one of the most important things that he got. I got it from the Marsalis family. I got it from so many other traditions and the biggest names, and I never knew it until I got much older because they were too focused on pouring into me. And I really want to start with a story because when I look at that little picture, that's what you guys do here every single day. And you never know what your story or what you give is going to give back. And before I move on, this is where that creativity began. And there was a really critical part of my story where I was graduating from high school. I was 15 years old. And I remember my music teacher, I was getting invitations to go be a scholar, to go be a scientist, to go be a gymnast, to go, I was accepted to Juilliard, I was accepted to New England Conservatory of Music, I was accepted to Tulane, University of Alabama, and I didn't know if I wanted to do music, medicine, or science. And I remember my music teacher, the only time he ever yelled at me, because I gave my money to a young girl who was running away because she found out she was pregnant. And he pulled me aside and he yelled at me, scared the hell out of me. And he said, if it were impossible to fail, what would you do? And I said I would be a musician, a scientist, and a clinician. And he said to me, you already are those things. You just have to enjoy the questions, but live your way to the answers. And it was at that critical moment that I would go off to do this. I would eventually go and get a PhD in neurobiology, mechanical engineering, and music. I was at the University of Alabama, where I earned a PhD, where I not only got a PhD in all three, but I was an MSAP student, so I was supposed to do medical school, and I decided I wanted to be a PA, and my surgeons, who at the time didn't speak to me for about 6 months to make sure I made the right choice. And then they eventually thanked me because now I get to work with all of them and they can share me between all of their different disciplines. So they work me harder just doing that. So I appreciate them. But what that lesson taught me was I had to learn how to create. Because from day one, I wrote grants to the NSF, to NEA, and I said, you know what? This is the only time in life I will get to do this. And driven out of that creativity and that innovation, it was to see an opportunity and say, how can I do this better? I always said I wanted to combine music, medicine, and science together to be able to heal people, to be able to understand the science behind it, and also to still be able to create. And for a 15-year-old starting college and then start your PhD at 20, there were a lot of things about life that I did not know. I'll leave it at that. But it didn't stop me. There were great mentors and people. And so where that creativity began with that little boy kept growing through a young man in college, and eventually he would go off to achieve a PhD in neurobiology, mechanical engineering, music, as well as getting $2.8 million in grants, would eventually get to meet the president at that time, Barack Obama, at the inaugural affair, and would get to go all around the world helping others combine what music, medicine, and science would actually do. So that's where it is now. So as we get into this discussion, I want us to be able to think about what that journey looks like and how we can replicate that for anyone. I always love this slide, right? Because it's a great way of showing you what this actually means, what we're really going to be talking about. Not just from a standpoint of, here are facts, but it's lived experience, right? How we take the knowledge that we're given about these experiences and actually put them into actionable items that people can do something with. Now, when I think about healthcare, yes, I had to go through all the anatomy, physiology, all the clinical hours, non-sleep, trauma, surgery, all the above. But then I also learned I wanted to see how the sciences and technology work, from engineering and neurobiology, and then the arts and humanities. They are all very, very different. But one lesson that I learned from this is when you have a scientist and you have a clinician speaking together, they share the same language, but they have very different experiences. And I think that is a really critical piece of understanding, is you can still be in the same room as we are right now. You could all be artists, musicians, visual artists. You could be dancers, performers, but do you speak the same language? You may speak similar language, but your experience will drive that. And I think that was a really interesting part of understanding how we can have a common grounding and shared experience, but how do we drive and innovate new values? And this is a great way of being able to actually look at that, was when you have divergent values, how do you create some sharing, creating language behind that so you can arrive to your future state. And I can definitely tell in this room, this is what all of you have been talking about. How can we work with the entrepreneurs and the businesses and the communities and government and policy and educators to create a better place where people get to put their inputs they want to see happen and actually make them take place? Let's start with a little talk about why the arts matters and how long it's really been around. The art predates language, and it is present in all cultures. The first way we actually had social media was cave paintings, okay? Social media right there. Did you see what happened with that dinosaur? Girl, let me put it on this box right over here. The cave said it all. The other part of it, how do you think we gave history or told about who we were? It was told through our songs. And we especially know that right here, do we not? It was told through our songs. Let's look at this. Everywhere around the world, what we eat, what we do, how we move, how we do it, defines our culture. Can I get a baby from the audience? Oh, y'all, baby, y'all understand. Right, okay? But the other part about this is think about it. What else do we use the arts and culture for? When we've had our most struggling times in our lives, what have we done? When we've had a ceremony, a funeral, a wedding, a breakup, a stressful time, what did y'all do when y'all had that? What was there with you? Music, a painting, a picture. Don't give a bride her wedding album and see what happens to you, okay? right? Personally bringing that back home. What about that song of that loved one that's no longer here with you? And every time you hear that song, you feel loved, you feel supported. That's why it's so important. So it has always been with us. So before we say that this isn't important, it doesn't have any relevance or any value, all of our lives are steeped in the very things that you do in this building. And yet for some reason, its value for what it really does often goes underappreciated. So I want to talk about something I'm pretty excited about, which is a bit of music and the brain as a part of my research and what I personally do, and sort of debunking sort of it's a big topic, right? Let's think about it. It's neuroscience, it's medicine, right? It's a big topic, we can say that. And it's like, what are you doing talking about this with a group of artist scientists to bring some of these ideas and make them more palatable? But when we look at music and the brain and the exploration of science of song, music can tell us a lot about who we are. Not just music, but actually the arts. How many of you heard that sad song and wonder why it gets you that way, right? Ever thought about that? But if I put on, but look, if I put on some Zydeco music, what are y'all gonna do? Right. It's really hard to be sad and have that Zydeco music on, is it not? Get that little accordion going. You ain't gonna sit there too long, are you? Right? But that tells us a lot about who we are, what we're doing, and it all is based in our biology. Wow. So literally every single day we are innovated by the sound. Your hearing mechanism is the only aspect that never turns off. You close your eyes, light is done. Your auditory mechanism never turns off. And when we look at this from how this happens from a big picture, you see sound goes in through your ear, goes through your cochlea, gets to the hair cells in your ear, and then it goes and it gets processed into the brain. There's a lot more I could say about that, but I think this slide says it all. But what this is really showing is that this is not just something that's made up, it is something that is very real, and it's based in not only who we are, it's based in our biology. And there are a couple of things that I want to show you about it. So these are the different regions of the brain. If you look towards the front, that's the motor area of the brain. You go to the back, that's the sensory area. So for hearing, processing language, processing visual information towards the back at the occipital. But I also want you to look into the amygdala region and the hippocampus and the cerebellum. Something that I want to mention about all of this. How many are familiar with the aspects of anxiety or PTSD? Okay. Normally, they will happen at the areas of the amygdala, and normally what happens, if you think about it, you get signals coming in, coming down. An easy way to think about this is that it literally makes you function at your brainstem. That's the reason why people who are under stress can't respond well. They can't get to their frontal cortex, or stressors for them literally limits what they can process in their brain. Music, however, is one of the few things that can actually affect and get to all of the brain. And that was one of the most interesting things that we found in research. So look, studies have literally shown that music is a whole brain phenomena, that it is literally an activity that only for the 2,500 hair cells that you have to the millions of rods and cones you have within your eyes, your hearing literally will affect more areas of your entire brain. Now, why is that? I was like, music must be really good. But let's go back to those cave paintings. How many of you have been out hunting? Look, we are in Louisiana. We are in the South. How many of y'all have seen a snake or some animal you didn't want to see that made you jump? Okay, all right, okay, all right, now come with me here, all right. Now think about it. Did you see that thing? Probably not. Not right until you were right up on it, right? You're normally going to hear it first. And that's the reason why the startle response, or what's protecting me, is that bear or lion trying to eat me, right? Your auditory mechanism was a part of creating your flight or fight response, which is why it is so pivotal to your survival. And so when you link that to music and the aspects, another sort of what we call a evolutionary cheesecake is that it also created whole brain memories. It's grounded into our memory. What songs were pleasurable, what soothes us, what sounds were threatening or something's trying to eat me. So these older systems have been overlaid, and now we get to using them for creative processes. So this is a really interesting aspect. Now, that was just listening to music. This is actually research I conducted while I was at Tulane with my professor, Dr. Ed Gollop, where we were especially like, we're in a music city like New Orleans, and yet, like, why don't we look at the neuroscience of like music and then compare it with aging brains as well as musicians versus non-musicians? And what we found was amazing. We found that musicians actually have bigger brains. They have bigger brains. We just have to keep them all the other stuff when they're at the bars and stuff to make sure they can utilize those brains, okay? All right? Just because you have bigger brains, you still got to use it or lose it, okay? Okay, so we definitely found that musicians have bigger brains because they actually make more neuro connections. Part of how they can pull in these experiences that allows them to emote and physically act is actually also based in their brain. We've actually found areas of the brain called the knob region, which literally is in the motor cortex, which shows that if they're a pianist, this area has more development, right? So we're finding these overlaps of things that are protected, but this was interesting. We found that musicians, not only do they have bigger brains, because they have more connections, they also can perceive sound differently than non-musicians, which makes sense. We've also found there are other studies that look at this with artists, that look at this with dancers, that look at this with any kind of skilled aspect. So this is what the science and the study is showing, but one other thing we also noted is that it also improves cognition over time, so longevity. So these are just some of the takeaways. We all know that music can improve all three of these areas as we just discussed as a takeaway. So it's not just something that's made up. It's something that's actually very real. And it's the things that you literally have talked about or exploited and didn't know you were doing it probably for quite some time. And I love drawing this back to your attention. When you're teaching a kid a song, how do we learn our alphabets? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, what? W, X, Y, and Z. Tim. Okay, sorry. I'm sorry. I was getting into it a little too much. I'm sorry. So, but you know what, though? We've also found, even for training, even in medical school, right? What's the best thing you did? You had a mnemonic, you had a memory map, and you had those acronyms, or you had a song. We have now learned, we've used music to learn, to create memories. When you've had a good memory or a great memory or a bad memory, your fight song, your fraternity song, your sorority song, all these things are encoded into creating memories for us. Anything that we do, especially from here, these are all things that are very important to defining not only who we are, but what we are. Now let's talk about music as medicine. Now we've just established that music and the arts and culture have been with us well before written language, right? Or oral, and we've all oral. We've now just seen some of the science aspects of how music and the arts affects within the brain. Why don't we talk about how it can be used as medicine, caring through the arts? And I really love this phrase. While a cure may not always be available, healing always is. I want to say that again. While a cure may not be available, healing always is. And I want to share a very personal story from when I was in PA school on one of my favorite rotations, neurosurgery. And there was this beautiful little girl, beautiful, just blonde little girl from, I'll never forget it, from Coleman, Alabama, North Alabama. And her father, we had very different beliefs about things, but he was a great guy. And I remember going down, and she had, it's called dorsal pontine disease, which basically means it's a degenerative disease that does not come up until you're like 7, 8, 9, or 10. So you have this perfectly normal child, and then literally they start to atrophy. And you have to watch that as a parent. And I was the one working with the neurosurgeon had to find it, and he was like, you built a rapport with this family. Some reason they like you better than they like me. They're child's pediatric neurosurgeon, but they like you better, so you need to go tell them this. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to actually do. Because I really loved going to see this little girl. and I would go see her. Even when I was off that rotation, I still stayed involved in their care because it meant that much to me. And I had to finally tell her, and her father was like, how am I going to tell my daughter that she's dying? He said, I can't tell her that. She's too important. She was just, when I say just sweet and smart and curious, I can still see that smile. And I said, you know what? I'm going to sing a song for her, and you're going to hold her hand. And that song was Lullaby by Billy Joel. And every year, on that day where she passed away, I play that song and put it on my social media or send it just to them. They know who they are, and they receive it. And even at her funeral, that song, I literally sang it, and his father was there. Those moments, those memories became a source of healing for him. And it's been 8 years later. And while there was not a cure for what happened, it taught me one of the most valuable lessons as a provider is my job is not always to fix. My job is to sometimes to promote healing and to make sure that my patients are healing through what this experience may bring them. How the arts does it. Music as a therapy, art as a therapy, movement as a therapy. And yes, through evidence-based, we have found that music and the arts have helped with things such as Parkinson's, neurodegenerative disorders. It's helped with loneliness within our elderly population. It has helped with dealing with stress and mental health and anxiety disorders. We have found that it is also a vital part of how we deal with trauma responses and physical rehabilitation. Pain management. We have literally found a lot of evidence-based aspects for what is going on with this. It's a much more extensive list, but I did want to share with you that these are actually from peer-reviewed articles of what are the real facts surrounding it. And also, too, this is actually a great article from the World Health Organization where they literally got together with a consortium through the Jameel Art Labs to say, what are the recommendations for using arts as medicine within clinical settings? It's still an early ongoing process that we're working with, but it's essentially saying, how can we use the art intervention to reduce anxiety, depression, improve morale, have artists come into these settings with clinicians to help guide that, right? There's still education and guidance that has to be had surrounding this, but it's also looking at healthcare, non-pharmacological interventions, right? You have someone who's elderly and maybe they lost their spouse, getting them to go to an art museum, getting them to see it virtually, or even going and having someone visit them, or going singing in the choir. Those are activities that have pulled people out of some experiences and using that and making that available. We do that naturally here, right? So normally the elderly people who are in these communities do a lot better because they're gonna get that Zydeco music, have their little cocktail, their crawfish. Now we wanna reduce the sodium, we'll talk about that later, all right? Baby steps. But I wanna tell you this. Creativity is life, and it's learning to take what you've been given and making the best of it, but also with the best information. The arts has never just been about pretty pictures and songs. The arts has been about providing us a framework of how we can live and experience our lives more fully. And especially to what many of you have talked about, I look at this creativity then and creativity today. I didn't get here by myself. It was a community of artists and teachers and educators and people just like you. And if you really want to know what creativity is, it is saying in the face of adversity and our differences that we matter, and it is worth fighting for. And that's what's creative, because it takes nothing to be destructive and get rid of something. But the arts provides us a framework to be all of who we are through every stage of life. Let me go back one. And that's how the arts can play a role in our life at every stage. As we're learning, right? Best time to help kids deal with their emotions, you're throwing a tantrum. Here, let's do a play about it. I don't like well, you just did that the other day, right? So for young bodies, it's a great way for them to learn about themselves, learn about how to express their emotions, movement, get better at moving, That's why we put our little ones into gymnastics and sports and dance, because over time it teaches them how to control their bodies better, right? So it is integral to their learning. As we mature just a little bit, go into college, I broke up with that girl or guy. Now I'm sitting here listening to like Luther Vandross in my room alone all the time, trying to get over it. Somebody give me one of your breakup songs. Who gonna be bold enough and give it out here? Yell it out. Oh! Don't talk about it. Give me one more. Baby. How about Weak from SWV? That's when it's good. That's when it's all starting, okay? All right? So look, and then the other part is longevity. I don't think I'm gonna be doing gymnastics, even though I'm, a young, spry 41-year-old man. I'm probably not gonna be doing that. But the one thing I certainly will be doing for the rest of my life is playing music, right? Or listening to music, or being engaged in art activities. And we have literally found in evidence and research that getting older audiences involved in arts is crucial and critical for their health and well-being and combating loneliness, which has become an endemic amongst our elderly population, even 55 and older. That's not old, right? And also amongst our men. These are just some of the things that I'm involved in, where I'm working between Australia and Atlanta, working with building STEM arts programs for some of our First Nations kids who are in Alice Springs, Australia. And I'm connecting them with kids that are actually here in Louisiana, Baltimore, Maryland, and Atlanta, Georgia. Part of this is that I'm using a technology that's letting them see each other and collaborate, and it's also sharing culture. So they're getting to share culture about where they are in Australia with pretty much culture that's coming here from the South and Louisiana, so yeah. Anyhow, because it's jazz and it's culture and it allows them to bring their best selves, but the real project of it is that they're getting to see themselves at their age through someone else's eyes somewhere else in the world. And when you get to see that, you get to learn a lot about yourself, because you want to think everything is just real different, right? Grass is greener syndrome, but the grass is always greenest where you water it. And so this project that not only is fun, but it's been really helpful because it's given them a way to not only just use social media, but to connect technology, connecting it with culture. It becomes more than social, it becomes transformative, which is actually what my research is actually based on. I didn't tell them that. That's where the innovation is because literally when you have to bring these people over to two places, you're literally sharing work that is taking place from artists who are here, bringing them somewhere. We give them an arts residency in Australia. They get to stay for a month. They come back. They're energized. They're charged. And not only that, it drives the economy there as well as the one where they are locally. So it's not just for the kids, it's not just for the area, but it's also driving innovation within this area, which is because where people and great ideas go, so does the investment. It's just a little bit about the other work that I do. I'm actually the lead professor for health, arts, and technology in the Northern Territory of Australia, where literally we're looking at how the arts can improve lives and how it can help to reduce can reduce incidence of mental illness, PTSD, FAST, which is fetal alcohol syndrome, and also while patients are getting dialysis, we're giving them arts and music therapy. Renal disease is a big issue there, so we're finding ways to bring the arts into therapeutic spaces. And also, too, I'm also in Atlanta again as the medical director for the Artist Clinic Without Borders, where if I have artists who come in, I provide clinical specialized services for them through Faebris Medicals, through my main clinical doctor there, Dr. Zandretta Timms Cook. And I'm also a Sphinx Fellow, which is the largest music social justice organization in the country, where they literally provide scholarships to kids who want to be placed into orchestras around the world, which is right here. And that little song Caduceus symbol is the symbol for my clinic, and I literally made it with one of my best friends who's in the audience, who knew me when I was a kid and I was 6 years old. I grew up with her family. Do not show any embarrassing photos. But she can tell you I literally created this image back in high school when I was that little kid. And it has followed me ever since. So it's trademarked. I wanted to first say, support your local music before we get into the performance. And then I thought I'd share this one because that's from me, it's Mardi Gras, so you know who you're dealing with, all right? But I'm gonna put it back on this while I'm playing my song. So y'all came here for some music too, right? Ah, Jesus. Now look, I got to tell this little story before we go into this. There were some nuns that helped me get here. Satan was busy. Y'all, he didn't want me here. But I said, not today, Satan, but these nuns helped me get here. So they gave me a rosary. Literally, I walked up, I was trying to get a flight. My flight, literally, the gate changed 3 times in less than 3 minutes. And I'm very much a man of order because I'm kind of anal retentive. I like details. I was at the gate, talked to the gate person, was very polite. I walked up to the place. I was literally across from where and they never called my name, never told me where they changed it. And I just walked up politely and said, I'm supposed to be on this flight. Can you help me, ma'am? She's like, well, I'm just going to close it off. And I was like, ma'am, I understand you're having a stressful day, but I really have somewhere I need to be. Can you help me? Or where can I go to receive this help? She's like, well, I don't want to talk to you. The nun saw it, stayed calm. Y'all. I was good. I was cool. Ain't have to come out to box with nobody. And literally, the other guy that helped me walked over and saw the nuns, and the nuns told on the woman there, and she started crying. She's like, they were like, ma'am, did he ever raise his voice? No, was he mean to you? No, he was like, he was really nice to you, wasn't he? And those nuns guilted her in such a way. baby, I got on my knees, started praying for her. I was like, baby, hold on, Lord, demon, let her loose. But I'm here, okay? So I am here, all right? So we're gonna keep this right here. So I'm going to give you 2 options. Do you want something that is off the shelf, or do you want something that I've composed? Oh, God, all right. Do you want something off the shelf and composed? All right, I'll just give you both. Let me do 2 pieces then, because I prepared a whole bunch. Okay, now, all right, hold on. The first one is Bittersweet. And it's actually a song. Actually, there are 2 songs I worked on with Ellis, and they were songs I worked on with Ellis. And it was one I had to do for my DMA graduation. And the title of the song is called Bittersweet because it's a song that has a melody that you'll hear. It's jazz, but the melody of the song is meant to share how we share a connection with other people, and as we go through our life, our connections to them changes. And so it's going to sound like it's almost a choir of people. There are parts where it's consonant, where it's pleasing, parts where it's dissonance, like where you're arguing with somebody, but you love them. And there's a part where you have to get out of that noise to be able to hear yourself. And there's a part where it's literally going to sound like a prayer. And you're going to hear a part of the music where it's literally where it's coming from the inside out, where you figure things out and you finally have resolution. And the second piece I may play for you is either just a rearrangement of a very famous song, Amazing Grace. Or I can play something else that's classical. Which one do you want? That's what okay. Well, first one is Bittersweet. I guess this next piece is for the nuns, huh? So this is going to happen a little bit differently. I think I want to give you a little bit of an intro about the song. How many of you are familiar with Amazing Grace, just the song itself? Okay. That's the danger of doing a song like this, right? Because it means a lot of things to a lot of people. Of course, it was about an imperfect man who realized what he was doing in life was not what was best, but it was conflicting. And he made a choice to change and work to be better. I think like all of us do, right? It's never just black and white. It's always a mix of a lot of things. And even through the rest of his life, he still struggled, but he still kept going in a direction that was still better. And we start to realize grace is not really a forgiveness that we give to others. It's really the one we give to ourselves. And we're never, ever, it's never about being worthy. It's about being accepting of it. And a part of the song that's interesting was like, if you could really turn that into just more than just a song we hear every day, like, you know, when grandma's like, if I don't hear that song, you know, something's gonna happen to you. What does that song really mean when you take it into a transformative nature? There's a part of this piece that I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to ground it in the reality of just strip it down, and then let's do something with it to make it tell a story. And there's a part of it where you're gonna hear like a choir and angels, and then there's this emotional breakdown, then it's gonna be a celebration towards the end, okay? So I'm just kind of warning you for what to expect so somebody don't get mad with me, all right? Let's see what happens. Thanks, brother. Oh, thanks.
Hard to follow that. Oh, well, you know, I cried a couple of times, so I'll take a little breath. Following this, we'll have a reception out in the atrium. Please stay. Christophe will join us as well as all the speakers from today who are still present and available. So stick around for a little bit, talk a little bit more about what you heard today, what you learned, how we can put it into action here in our own community. Because, again, this is an incredible place for arts, culture, and it's the thing that knits us together and does wonders for our community. But like Dr. Jackson said, you know, the grass is greenest where you water it. So I look forward to watering the grass with all of you. Thank you for being here at States of the Arts. And don't forget your commitment cards. Give it up one more time for Dr. Jackson.